Number 10. The Ex-Boyfriend. Augustine Garcia walked into Gladys Rickard's two-story New Jersey home on September the 26th, 1999, dressed as a guest for the wedding. Garcia and Rickard had broken up nearly 9 months ago after a rocky 6-year relationship, and he just couldn't believe she was moving on with her life so quickly. Garcia walked into her home at 4 p.m. dressed as if he was actually invited to her wedding, wearing a tux and carrying a briefcase. Rickard was just finishing up taking wedding pictures with her bridesmaids, maid of honor, and other members of the wedding party. Before Rickard had a moment to react, Garcia pulled out a .38 caliber gun from his briefcase and shot at the bride-to-be several times. Rickard died instantly, and Garcia was restrained by her brother, who held him at gunpoint until authorities arrived. As other guests rushed outside towards the commotion, Augustine Garcia stood calmly in the room with Rickard's brother and his ex-girlfriend's lifeless body on the floor, her lacy, silver-white wedding gown now crimson red, covered in blood. For his crime, Augustine Garcia received life in prison. He just couldn't let his ex move on with her life, and it drove him mad. He pleaded insanity and claimed that he only in shock, but a court ruled that he deserved to be locked up behind bars for good. Number 9. Cartel Killers. In 2020 in Mexico, what was supposed to be the happiest day of one bride's life turned into her final moments on earth. The bride, Carem Lisbeth Yepa Ortiz, was assassinated by the Mexican cartel while she was standing at the altar. After the violent cartel members killed her, they kidnapped the groom. They stormed the wedding, shot the bride, stole the groom, and then escaped, peeling off in vans. As for why this tragedy happened, it had to do with rival gangs. According to the National Post, the bride's brother was part of a rival gang to the CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. In a brutal show of force, the cartel crashed the wedding in the most horrific way imaginable. Even the groom was part of a rival gang. He was an alleged narcotics trafficker named El Calamarado. While this was definitely a tragic incident, it wasn't totally unforeseeable. After all, if you're going to traffic drugs in Mexico and do dealings with cartels, somebody might show up and kill your bride on your wedding day. Number 8. Deadly Helicopter Crash. Rosamir de Nascimento Silva had big plans for her wedding. From her wedding dress to flower arrangements, she had it all chalked down. The bride-to-be was all set to marry her fiancé Udertli Damasceno in a ceremony planned at Sao Paulo in July of 2017. Right before the wedding was set to take place with the groom already at the altar, Rosamir had one final surprise: her grand entrance. The bride-to-be's family reported that she had insisted on one crucial element for her wedding, something she had been planning since she was a young girl. Rosamir had always wanted to enter her wedding venue via a helicopter, and her family obliged. The day of the wedding, Rosamir, her brother Silvano Nascimento de Silva, the pilot PETERSON Pinheiro, and the photographer Naya Cristina Neves boarded the helicopter that was set to take them from a nearby football field to the wedding destination. Out of the 300 guests who were present at the wedding venue, only 6 of them knew of the bride's entrance, one of whom was the wedding organizer, Carlos Eduardo Batista. Batista spoke to authorities later on stating that the entire journey was set to take a mere 15 minutes, and that he thought reports of a crash occurring were unrelated to the bridal party. However, that's exactly what happened. In disturbing footage that was later released, all 4 members on the helicopter can be seen calmly riding the aircraft moments before the screen turns pitch black and all you can hear are screams. Authorities ruled that the crash occurred because of the pilot's negligence and the unsafe weather conditions, i.e. the fog, for the crash. Damasceno stood at the altar waiting for his bride, unaware that she had just been killed in a fatal helicopter crash. Number 7. That didn't take long. Oksana Polodenseva had fallen in love with Stephen Dolgic while he was serving a prison sentence for multiple counts of robbery and murder. Oksana would write to Stepan, and that's how their love blossomed, and he proposed marriage shortly after being released. Family members claim that they tried to talk Oksana out of tying the knot several times, given Stepan's violent criminal history. The bride-to-be, however, believed that she could help her groom-to-be mend his ways and become a better man. The wedding took place in Novosibirsk, Russia in October of 2020. At the alcohol-fueled reception, however, things took an ugly turn. Stepan, in a drunken rage, accused his newlywed bride of cheating on him with a wedding guest. He began by hurling obscenities at his bride and then began to assault her. He literally started beating her an hour after they said "I do." After Steppen beat her in the house, he dragged her out in the street and kicked her head until his shoes were covered in blood. Then, despite there being many guests witnessing the murder, he dragged her into a ravine and left her for dead. He was arrested by police before the end of the day. She clearly couldn't change him, and he is a broken man. Number 6. Marrying the murderer. A man from Ohio who was convicted of murder got married to the sister of the man whom he was accused of killing. Yep, you heard that correctly. In August 2021, Crystal Strauss got married to John Tejan. But over 30 years earlier in 1987, John Tejan was convicted of killing Crystal's brother, Brian McGarry. It wasn't just an accusation either. John spent 32 years in prison for the murder. But after 3 decades, the judge finally threw out the murder conviction and granted John a new trial because his defense attorney brought up new photos and police reports. These reports had not been viewed in the original trial. Keep in mind that it doesn't mean that John spent 32 years being innocent. In all honesty, though complete speculation, the new evidence was just a ploy by his defense attorney to get him out of jail. As John was looking at being released, Crystal sent him a letter in which she forgave him. She also said that she believes that he did not kill her brother. They started talking, one thing led to another, and right before John went on trial for the second time, Crystal married him. It really makes you wonder what must have happened in Crystal's life over the past 32 years to make her want to marry her brother's alleged killer. We're still waiting for the retrial to see once and for all if John is really guilty. If he is, it'll be interesting to see if he and Crystal get a divorce. Will she stay married to this guy even when it's proved a second time that he brutally killed her brother? Do you think John is innocent? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Best man responsible for worst wedding memories. Primary school teacher Aaron Mason George had married Section Commander Stephen Wilson in a ceremony that took place at the Lampeter's Falcondale Hotel in Ceredigion in Wales. The wedding went on without any hiccups, it was beautiful, and went ahead as planned. However, violent punches were thrown later at the reception that followed shortly thereafter. The groom's brother, Tomas Ridian Wilson, went on a drunken rampage at the after-party, throwing his fists at the bride, dragging her by her wedding dress, assaulting members of her family who tried to intervene, and claiming that the wedding should never have taken place. A court found Wilson guilty of assaulting several members of the bride's family. Wilson, a prison guard, took to the stand to state his case. He was merely protecting his brother, whom he had seen being slapped by Mason George and her family as he was drunkenly being carried to bed. Harry Wilson, also a best man at the wedding, backed Wilson's testimony, saying that he too had witnessed Mason George slap their brother. A court, however, ruled that Wilson had reacted in an unruly manner by first yelling obscenities at the bridal party and then pulling her by her wedding gown, causing her to fall down a flight of stairs. Wilson then threw several punches at the newlywed bride, as well as her 2 sisters and mother, who tried to stop him. Aberystwyth Court determined that Wilson would be subjected to community service for 12 months, carry out 240 hours of unpaid work, and pay compensation in the amount of £250 to both sisters and the bride, as well as another £100 to the bride's parents. And to think, this guy is now her brother-in-law. Number 4. Wedding Crashers. Rony Aristides Castaneda Ramirez, 28, and his brother, Josue Daniel Castaneda Ramirez, 19, were asked to leave a residence in Chino, California, where a wedding was taking place. Joe Melgoza, a resident of the area, was set to marry his fiancée at the bride-to-be's sister's home on December the 16th of 2019. The 2 brothers showed up at the ceremony unannounced and were asked to leave. Shortly thereafter, they returned with bats and began causing a scene. Melgoza, who had just been married by the time they got back, went outside to talk to the 2 men to get them to leave. Wedding guests became concerned after a while when Melgoza had not returned. They went out looking for the newlywed and found him lying unconscious in a pool of blood at a home nearby. Melgoza was immediately rushed to the hospital where he was kept on life support, but died the very next day. The 2 brothers were apprehended by the authorities and immediately taken into custody. Family members and friends were shocked to hear about Joe Melgoza's death. The newlywed was reportedly a model citizen and a single parent to his 11-year-old daughter. Number 3. Baggage. Dawn Walker had been planning her wedding for months. The 52-year-old resident of West Yorkshire had gotten engaged to 25-year-old Thomas Nutt back in 2020. Friends and family members recounted how Walker would enthusiastically plan her big day. The mother of two wanted a close-knit ceremony surrounded by all those whom she held dear. Walker and Nutt married at a registrar's office in West York in late October of 2021. The bride-to-be wore a red dress with a matching red fascinator, and the groom-to-be wore a gray suit with a red tie to complement his bride's dress. The wedding was an intimate one, followed by a party held at a pub nearby. Everyone who attended the wedding claimed that the entire atmosphere oozed with the love the newly wedded couple had for one another. Perhaps that's why they were all shocked to learn that Dawn Walker's body had been found stuffed in a suitcase at a children's park, and Thomas Nutt was arrested as the prime suspect in her murder, just 4 days after their wedding. Everyone was beside themselves with emotion, and several members refused to believe that Nutt was capable of committing such a crime against his new wife. Police officials, however, determined that Walker had been strangled to death and believed that the act was carried out by Nutt in a fit of jealous rage. Thomas Nutt is currently awaiting trial. Number 2. Groom killed by friends hours after marriage. A man identified as Bablu was killed within a few hours shortly after his marriage in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The newlywed had gotten married earlier that evening on the 17th of December in 2020. After the wedding festivities had wrapped up, the man went outside to meet several of his friends who had been invited guests at his wedding. The 6 men were all inebriated by the time the groom caught up to them. Reportedly, the men demanded that the newlywed groom return back with more alcohol. Upon his refusal and possible rebuttal that the men were already intoxicated, one of the 6 men stabbed Babalu to death. The other men stood accomplice to the murder and ran off shortly thereafter. The groom was discovered dead soon afterwards by concerned family members after he failed to return to the marital home. Police officials in Uttar Pradesh lodged a criminal report against the 6 men and managed to apprehend one of them. Officials are still on the lookout for the other 5. Number 1. Stepsister. Hours before Shahnaza was set to marry her fiancé Nasir Hussain Kawa, she was found by family members hanging from a ceiling fan. The woman was reportedly found by her stepbrother Shafi, who was inconsolable upon finding his stepsister's lifeless body. The police were called immediately, and Shahnaza's death was ruled as a suicide. However, Nasir suspected foul play in his bride-to-be's death and asked the police to launch an investigation into Shahnaza's murder. Post-mortem reports revealed that Shahnaza was indeed strangled to death before her body was staged to make it look like a suicide. Nasir was set to marry Shahnaza by the evening of December 15th in 2020. Based on his conversations with his bride-to-be, Shafi had been harassing her regularly over a property dispute. The property, along with jewelry and other valuables, were set to be given to Shahnaza. Police arrested Shafi along with 2 of Shahnaza's cousins, Wajid and Nigat, on suspicion of the woman's murder. During questioning, one of the 2 cousins confessed to the crime. They had ganged up on the bride-to-be while she was praying. One of the 3 men then doused her with chloroform and another restrained her, while the third strangled her to death. After committing the crime, they staged the body to make it look like she had committed suicide. Officials revealed that Shafi had promised both Nigat and Wajid a share in the property he believed he would receive after Shahnaza was out of the picture. Thanks for watching. Do you have any wedding horror stories? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like these. See you next time on The Bad Badger.